foundation of our house was built on an anthem. The anthem was a prayer our hearts rendered in the language of silence. The rooms reflect our hearts with no light, no warmth. The floors balance the stones our souls carry. Flowers withered by bitter breath. Cold crawls over us and nibbles at our seams. We never knew lack until poverty found residency in our mouths. Despondency has been rattling the door's hinges. Notwithstanding that, tonight we're hosting a dinner to find out how we got here, how we have come to this house, come I see you, to further life or to end it. Who bribed us into deserting our lifeline? We asked all and sundry to come dine with us, a night that stretched for 26 years. We served organic suggestions that night, topped with rhetorical questions. These guests are not here to eat the plight of our life's stories, to hear how we are not living to go to heaven, but to not look at every meal as though it's the Last Supper. We all keep glancing at equality with faint smiles, trying to ignore how we became victimized by the spoils of a struggle. No one often reminds the once oppressed how tyrannical giants fall. So when fortune favors them, greed has them inflating, bursting beyond their bellies. Illusions of democracy attempt to open my mouth, but reality has this tongue feeling like a severed limb. There are gaps in this conversation of intellectual liberation that have our voices shifting as tectonic plates. Until Father Time uttered his only words that evening, my people are destroyed for lack of knowledge. Abruptly, labor shouted to capitalism. This forged long-run romance between us and progress is no longer glue that keeps this house together. You have redefined moral hazards, dealt a hand to hedge everything but the people. With a smug, capitalism retorted, "Don't feed on what you can't fund." The futurist put on his contact lens to comment. This house is on fire. All present are flooding it with emptiness, drenching every space with blood clots to save its foundation. Tip the scales. Sorrow has assaulted your lungs for far too long. Deflate into a readiness to flow. Teach the mind so the heart may preserve its lessons. Our minds are gifts. Earth acknowledges our presence. And so the next day, we spring cleaned, dusted off distrust, washed the years of betrayal off the walls, washed inequality off our skin, watched injustice flow out the baths, and see it drain stagnation's throat. To hear our own esophagus emphasize the echo of victories our stomachs are yet to clasp. Soak ourselves in knowledge from Urban Festival 2020, embracing our best ideals which await in plenty. We will refurnish every room with a lived experience, embedded in the sight of memory, not yet sung of us.
What a wonderful way to be welcomed on this afternoon to Rules of the Game. And I think with that poetic welcome, there doesn't need to be much that I need to say. My name is Rehana. I'm a research associate at the South African Cities Network. Welcome to this Rules of the Game session. It would be great if colleagues who've joined us can rename themselves, if possible. Just hover over your name in the participant list and give us a sense of who you are and where you're coming from. We have a very short session. It's all of 1 hour to talk about a very big issue in relation to rules of the game. So we're really here to think about what rules do people who work in municipalities, what govern them? Rules govern them. How are decisions actually made? what shapes the behavior of people who work in municipalities, and who decides what gets done. So this is really a peek into some research work that is currently in process, and hopefully you'll get the opportunity to learn more about it. So you are all incredibly welcome. And at this point, I'm going to hand over to my colleague, Kayla. Okay, so great. We're going to make you all panelists just so that we democratize the space and you can all participate actively. Thanks, Sean. So please do just hover over your name in the participant list and give us a sense of who you are and where you're joining us from. Kayla, over to you.
Thanks so much, Rihanna, and a big welcome to everyone here. Our attendees who are now becoming panelists, congratulations for that promotion. And to all our practitioners who are joining us from all the different cities across South Africa, welcome. So just to quickly go over our very short jam-packed program, because time is short today, we'll use Mentimeter to quickly begin to enter some of the concepts of this session. Myself and the research team will provide some background. We'll show a quick video. We'll hear from practitioners themselves, how they understand the rules of the game, and we'll allow for an open discussion to respond to the work. And just to say, I think we've all been in enough of these Zoom calls to know how to conduct ourselves. But we are using Mural. That's what you can see on the screen right now. We also request your permission to record this session. Please keep your microphone off. And we'd like to bring your voices into the call. So rather than posting in the chat, please raise your hand, and Rihanna, who's facilitating, will allow you to unmute and talk into the discussion. So just a quick welcome from the team. Thanks very much to Rihanna, our very skilled facilitator. You can see the Parry team here as well. Mkhlatsi Rampedi, Kate Tissington, and Tracy Ledger. The five of us will be hosting this discussion today. So before we get into kind of some of the findings and the actual work, I'd like to quickly do a little experiment just to play with this notion of written and unwritten rules, which is a fundamental concept to the work. So I'm going to ask you to use Mentimeter. If you haven't used it before, prepare to be amazed. It is one of the joys of meeting virtually, that we can use this kind of technology. So the instructions are as follows. Please, will you get your phone or open a new tab on your laptop, on your internet browser, and go to www.menti.com. You can see the instructions at the top of my screen. So open menti.com, and enter the code 809794. And it will take you to a screen where you can submit your response. So what we really want you to do in this first question is to share one written rule of your organization. And if you don't belong to an organization, you can reflect back to when you were in high school or at varsity, or if you're part of a religious institution, and just reflect on one written rule. Please keep it short. 5 words should be more than enough. So there we go. We can see the answers coming in. Fantastic. So there are 3. There are about 34 participants on this call. So I'm going to wait for a couple more to come in before I go to the next slide. Always get procurement doc signed off by your manager. Track your time in timesheets. Many people saying I don't have written rules in my organization. That's interesting. submit a leave request, always adhere to the principles of the SDF 2040. I'll allow more to come in. Here's one about what you should wear. So you should dress in a manner befitting of the organization. You need 3 quotes. That's a classic one about procurement. So anyone who's ever had to buy anything or contract a service provider will know the joys of getting 3 quotes. Follow protocol. Okay, I'm going to go to the next slide in 3 seconds. Apologies if you haven't been able to enter your answer yet. Now the question is, share one unwritten rule of your organization. So this is a rule that's implied. It might not be in a contract or a performance agreement, but you know it exists. And these are what we're really interested in this project. So let's see, negotiate. Be polite and professional in emails. Always try for the best compromise between policy and development needs. Be humble. Under promise and over deliver. I love that. Respect and consideration, and do your work ethically. SCM will not say no, but it will say you can't do this, but you can do that. Always back yourself up with an email. That's good advice. Okay, I'll allow for 10 more seconds. Collaborate with colleagues. So some of these things are really, really important, like collaborating with colleagues, but they're never written down. A phone call to colleagues who don't use email does wonders. Okay. You can keep entering the answers, but I'm going to switch back to the mural now. Thank you so much for agreeing to play along with that. So now I quickly just want to frame the session through a little bit of a background to the session, so how this work came about and why the South African Cities Network is so interested in this question of rules. So this project, which is actually about performance management, comes from SACN's work with the Built Environment Integration Task Team, or the BEIT. And the BEIT is a group of city practitioners involved in spatial transformation who've been meeting since 2017 to learn from each other, share experiences and challenges, and ultimately to agree on a built environment and governance set of issues that require further research. And one of the BEIT's first research projects was the practice report, which I'll quickly flick to here. Here you can see it on the screen. And it was a case study-based approach to understand what factors support or undermine the practice of spatial integration through looking at these 4 big catalytic projects across the country. And what was found was that these 4 different factors are critical in shaping the way that practice takes place. And one of these factors was called the rules of the institution. I'll just switch back. So the rules of the institution really brought questions of decision-making and performance management to the fore in understanding the success or the failures of these spatial transformation projects. And 2 of the major hypotheses that emerged from exploring these different projects were firstly that there is a disjuncture between organizational value, such as the often tick box compliance-driven tasks, such as achieving time targets, having clean audits, which are often prioritized over achieving societal value, which can be seen as or thought of as actually working with people to improve the quality of life and the more qualitative aspects of development. The second is that practitioner behavior is not random. Rather, it's governed by a set of institutional rules, both unwritten and written, as we've just played with. So these two findings around the rules of the institution really inform the basis of this project, the rules of the game. The need for this project and understanding performance management was also constantly affirmed through the ongoing BATE meetings, where discussions around how to achieve better collaboration across sectors or how to better partner with NGOs or communities would often end with practitioners complaining or observing that these kinds of things are not measured. And you're not going to change our behavior unless you change what gets measured. And that's what is actually valued by the institution and what gets rewarded. And all this was coupled with the fact that when Jeff and I started talking about this project, we found that there's actually very little literature on the municipal performance management system in South Africa. So the Rules of the Game project was initiated earlier this year to look into precisely these issues. And PARI, the Public Affairs Research Institute, was hired to conduct the research. And we've been really privileged to walk this journey with Ketan Mkhlatsi, as well as Tracy, as the core research team. So I'll hand over to Ketan Mkhlatsi now to just briefly go into the what and the how.
Thanks, Kayla. Yeah, so the main aim of the research really was, as you said, to gain insights into the structure and operation of municipal performance management systems across the sample of South African cities, and to see and to find out the impact of these systems on what gets done and how they impact prioritizations of outputs and bureaucratic actions, with a particular interest in the drivers of institutional outcomes in terms of the built environment and spatial transformation in cities. The research was really intended as an exploratory piece of work in what is quite an under-researched area. And we decided to look at 5 cities, Ekurhuleni, eThekwini, Johannesburg, Nelson Mandela Bay, and Msunduzi. There's obviously differences across these cities, both political and organizational differences, and these translate, these translate into obviously different variations of how performance measurement and management is approached. Although all of these cities are working within the same broad legislative, regulatory, and policy framework. Some of the questions we explored in the research, so we wanted to know, do the features of performance management vary amongst the cities, or are there sort of similar characteristics, and what appear to be the main reasons for this? We wanted to also know what the impact of performance management systems on institutional outcomes are and what the pathways of influence on these outcomes are. We really wanted to understand as well the implications of the findings around this for built environment practitioners specifically, and then also look at things like how performance targets are developed and how they relate to cities' plans and frameworks. So the research really was about surfacing the details of the various institutional rules that prompt decisions and actions in cities or prevent others from happening. So these are the things that really define the reality of day-to-day bureaucratic actions in cities. The details really of performance management systems are central to what gets done in cities or what doesn't get done. So we really wanted to uncover the codified formal or uncodified informal rules that constitute municipal performance management systems. Codified or formal rules are sort of like legislation, official policies, plans, formal regulations, and other official systems. And then uncodified or informal rules, often these are actually ignored in organizational analysis because they're not obviously immediately visible, but they really are important to understand. And that's sort of things like traditional bureaucratic practices, the way things are sort of normally have been done or are done, the form and effect of the political administrative interface, informal pressures to sort of prioritize one set of codified or formal rules against others. And so we really wanted to look at those and surface those and understand the complex interplay between them, which exists. I think, one thing that is really important is that, the focus is often looking at performance measurement in cities. And we feel, and we found that, this is really something that should come at the end result of the system and really should be utilized as a performance management tool to really understand and analyze the progress that is being made to improve planning and thus organizational outcomes. So the analysis and the learning part really of performance management, as opposed to just the measurement part, is really key. And we found that that is something that is quite a neglected component across the cities. So I'll end there and let Mokgatle talk about a bit more about how we actually did the research.
So how we started with the research was through a detailed desktop research of local and international literature. We just wanted to actually look at all the, all of the legislation that is around performance management, and as Kayla and Kate mentioned about the rules of the game. So the crucial part in this was the second part, when we have to speak to officials themselves about their experiences within their organizations, their experiences with performance management, and how they think could be improved, where they can identify problems and the way forward. So this, we took some time to actually call everybody from these three different cities. And thanks to everybody, we got a lot of data and a lot of input in terms of the research project. So in addition to the interviews, we had some of the 2 workshops where we included officials and other stakeholders. We had 2 virtual workshops just to consolidate the findings of the draft report, as well as to closely co-develop the implications of the research and to find ways forward. So this started on the 2nd of October with a few officials that were interviewed from the cities. This is where we could get a bit more nuance into what they had said in the prior interviews, and for them to add additional information that we did not have before. So the second one was on the 6th of October. This is where we included pretty much everybody from different organizations, from COGTA, National Treasury, SALGA, the Western Cape Economic Development Partnership, the Department of Planning and Soil Monitoring and Evaluation, Department of Rural Development and Reform, and the HSRC. So we were able to put together a draft report from these workshops with everybody's input, and we circulated it to everybody else, and therefore creating a high-level summary of the draft, and actually presented this in those two workshops. So now, after gathering all of this, we have gathered the insights of everybody, and the inputs from the workshops were then incorporated into the final draft. So now there's another storyboard here created, just laying out our findings and recommendations. And from here on, we can continue with the festival. I'll end there, and unless you want to add anything else, Kate.
Thanks, Mokgatle, for that, and Kate. So I think we must move on in the interest of time. And thanks for sharing. So I just want to say that today what's important is that we really want to share this information because we think it's important for people who are not in government to understand these processes, So especially for people who are trying to interact with government and are pulling their hair out because they find this process so frustrating, which we hear about a lot. So I really believe, in line with our theme of the festival, in order for the civic to be empowered and to interact and work with government, we need to understand how these processes and rules of the institution work. So today we'll be sharing the work through a video in a second, which captures the very high level findings of the report. And we'll also bring in the voice of our 4 practitioners who we have on the call with us. So I'll show the animation now, which we developed so that we can share the kind of very broad high level findings of the report in an accessible and fun way for people who aren't necessarily in the municipality and who aren't necessarily going to read a 30-page report. Just to note that the video is still in draft format, and we will continue to work on it and add music and all of that. So Sean, if I can ask you to share the video.
Rules of the game. What rules govern urban development practitioners in your city? Municipalities are governed by different rules, both written and unwritten. Written rules include the plans, legislation, and frameworks that guide development planning. Unwritten rules vary and are created by political pressures, personal relationships, intergovernmental hierarchies, and financial pressures. Together, they determine what gets done, and they shape the municipality's institutional culture. The Municipal Performance Management System incorporates these rules and is meant to measure and improve what city officials actually do. Good performance is rewarded in this process through bonuses, but how do we measure good performance? On paper, cities may appear to be performing, but we know that development projects are generally not achieving the desired outcomes of spatial transformation. This research tries to answer this question by asking city officials themselves, what's working and what's not. Ideally, a performance management system works by setting goals for the organization and goals for individuals that match these organizational goals, collecting and analyzing information about whether goals were met, and then using this learning to improve performance and future planning. In reality, municipal performance management is more complicated. Local government is a very complex place with multiple and often contradictory rules which make performance management challenging. The IDP is intended to be one of the central planning documents in a municipality, but there are different ideas for what should be done because of the many demands from diverse communities, councillors, and other spheres of government. There is often not enough budget to fund everything in the IDP, and prioritization becomes difficult. Sometimes politicians ask officials to do things that were not included in the IDP. Municipalities also get money from other spheres of government, which come with strict performance conditions. Officials' individual goals should contribute towards organizational goals of the IDP, but not everyone shares these goals. Often, only senior managers do. People focus on what is on their scorecards, but a scorecard can be different from the IDP goals and instead can focus on administrative tasks that are easier to achieve. During a year, managers can reduce their targets to ensure that they are easily met. And very rarely are performance records actually used for improving practice or future planning. Some initial ideas for how to improve the performance management system include getting all departments and spheres of government to work together by rewarding collaboration, aligning departmental and individual performance to the goals of the organization, establishing a shared vision and a clear approach to how communities' lives can be improved. Performance reporting should contribute to officials learning and improving together. Of course, municipalities have limited resources and cannot do everything at once. But all employees should be working together towards clear goals that improve the lives of people in the city.
So thanks, Sean, for sharing the video, and Kayla Mashlatsi and Kate for giving colleagues some insight into the work of Rules of the Game and where it's come from. At this point, we are thrilled to invite in city practitioners from different municipalities just to give their perspectives very briefly on the practitioner experience that has been captured into this work, but to also hear your voices in this session. So just going to ask you to do, each one of you to do a quick introduction of who you are and your reflections on this Rules of the Game work as you see it unfolding. Nirvana, can we kick off with you perhaps?
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, colleagues that have joined us. I think from my perspective, a lot of the concerns that I have been covered as part of the video. The predominant one being that there seems to be a lack of collaborative planning within municipalities. As a result, we're not measuring the collaborations in the work that we do. So it goes back to the fact that there seems to be a flaw in the design of our entire system, where people and staff, particularly at senior management level, only want to be held accountable for what is in their control. But lots of things are actually not within their control and require teamwork to achieve a particular output. So we've gotten to a point where we're not measuring or monitoring those things, and we're not, as a result, holding people accountable. And we're missing the achievement of those targets or not monitoring those at all. So again, as I said, it's linked to the silo-based planning. Also the fact that we've got poor alignment between the strategy and our operations, and we don't seem to be planning for performance, but it seems to be an afterthought. So from my perspective, I think those are the main issues that we have on hand. I think if we are able to resolve some of those issues, we'd make strides into improving as we move on. Thanks, Johanna.
Thanks, Nirvana. I'm going to stay with eThekwini and invite Manalisi, who's the Deputy Head Performance M&E at eThekwini, to get your reflections on the work and the video and just your experiences as a practitioner. Is this an accurate reflection from your perspective? Manalisi? Just unmute, Manalisi. Okay, whilst Manalisi is getting ready, let's maybe move over to Nelson Mandela Bay. Shiona Clausen, Assistant Director of Policy and Research at the Nelson Mandela Bay Municipality. Shiona, your insights and thoughts from a practitioner perspective?
Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for being part of this session. I must first thank SA Cities Network for the very engaging manner in which the research was undertaken. Using imagery and the artistic and creative abilities of individuals to bring our thoughts and the ideas and insights and perspectives together is really a unique way of having done it. And the video, I think, really effectively captures the insights that were presented during the various sessions that we had with SA Cities Network. Without repeating too much of what has been said in the video and agreeing with what Nirvana has already said, I just want to highlight a few of my key thoughts around performance management within municipalities and specifically within our own. So the first one is around governance, and I think that in an attempt to improve good governance, many regulations, policies, and strategies were introduced, particularly within the performance management space. And there are many players that have to feed into these various systems that regulate performance management. However, by regulating the space so much, we sometimes get lost between our long-term strategic goals and the impact that we are supposed to have on society. And I think it's captured in the video through speaking to the quality of life that we would like to provide to the citizens of South Africa. My second point relates to the reporting burden that is placed on municipalities because of all these regulations. And I think that the initiative led by National Treasury, which we commonly know as Circular 88, is a step in the right direction in bringing about a commonly understood system of performance management, but also a common system for understanding what is being measured, how it is being measured, for the purposes of comparative analysis, perhaps at a later stage, to see how we are faring in and amongst municipalities. Then I'd like to highlight that COVID-19 for me highlighted the fact that there are areas that we can immediately improve. Our infrastructure relating to communication and information, for example, if we could focus on that and reduce some of the administrative burdens that are placed on administrators on a daily basis, by perhaps automating some of the more mundane administrative activities, I think we can be more productive. And then coming back to regulation, I think because we are so regulated, we are driving this system of compliance, which has been said in the video also, which takes away from our ability to be creative and innovative within the space, because we are constantly driving towards achieving that target within a specific timeline and meeting, ticking all the check boxes that's associated with the compliance matters.
Okay,
And then lastly, I'd like to highlight
that the last one, Shiona, right?
difficult to measure qualitative. Yes, lastly, to measure qualitative objectives, which are very often key to achieving your goals, such as facilitation, relationship building, fostering cooperative and collaborative relationships between the parties. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Shiona, for those. Takalani, can we move over to you in Johannesburg? Gonna ask you not necessarily to deal with stuff that Nirvana and Shiona might have already covered, but be keen to get your perspectives on this work, the video, and what this research could mean to municipal practitioners and the system going forward.
Thank you for the opportunity. Thank you for the video. The video captures that which is expected as far as performance management is concerned, and it's very user-friendly, and it communicates the imperatives of performance management system. And it indicates issues of alignment. When you look at the IDP, that the IDP, there are challenges with regard to the funds. How do we go about executing our service delivery mandate? We've got unfunded mandate that as officials we need to execute. Again, the research will assist in terms of building the capacity as far as the literature review is concerned, and the documentation of the learning practices, which is key for us as local government. Another point that is of contention for me is the national, provincial, and local government planning. The planning processes are fragmented, and as such, this creates challenges as far as us. I think my colleagues have alluded in terms of how we do the reporting, the burden as far as reporting is concerned. What cannot be measured cannot be on the scorecard. It is true that we need to balance. I think this is a separate issue on the leadership. You need to deal with your Section 57 issues and the organizational issues performance and the individual issues performance. So those are the three levels for me that we need to deal with. One, which is your political level, which the executive mayors, they've got their own mandate and that they need to execute via the executive, which is your Section 57. And Section 57 outcomes need to reflect that which is in the IDP and the BEP. And the lower levels, which are us, performance management in my city, lower level sections 57 that they are managed by corporate and shared services. For us in our city, there's that distinction between the executive performance management system and the other levels. There's that clear distinctions as far as the city of Johannesburg is concerned. Predetermined objectives are set and are clear. Mid-year deviations is acceptable. It's acceptable for us to review and tweak where indicators and targets cannot be achieved based on the material conditions on the ground. I think those would be my few cents.
Great. Thanks, Takalani. So colleagues, we have about 20 minutes left for the session. We really want to democratize the space. So we've made you all panelists. So it's not a webinar style where you're just listening to the research team or the practitioners. And I'm now going to open for conversation and reflections from the floor. You know, you could either put questions on the research work that was done, or the practitioner experience that has been shared, or your own experience and any comments. So I will take hands. Manalisi, I'm gonna reserve for you to come in if there's a need to respond, but let's note hands. If there are any virtual hands, you just go to the participant list and raise your hand. If you can't, just let me know that you need to speak. That's fine. So, I mean, I think we're keen to get insights from attendees who might be outside of municipalities, whether this work helps you to better understand rules, both written and unwritten, as they affect cities. And if colleagues are from within government structures and municipalities, does this research begin to accurately reflect some of your real and lived experience? And particularly, as Kate has said, the notion that we're very busy with performance measurement as opposed to performance management. Questions, comments, the floor is yours, colleagues. So I'm not seeing any hands for now. Is there anyone who'd want to reflect? If you're not able to find the virtual hand, just kind of unmute yourself and talk. That's fine. I know that some of you who joined the call earlier in the, okay, somebody's wanting to come in. I'm not sure who it is, but please feel free to do that.
It's Manalisi.
Yeah, Manalisi, please go ahead.
Yes, no, thanks very much, colleagues. And I'm not gonna repeat what my colleagues have said. And I'm also not gonna repeat what the video showed. I think to me, it captures really the critical areas that are of concern in a performance monitoring space in the municipality. But now, where I'm interested on is what are the solutions? How do we solve this problem that we are having? Where I am now, I sometimes ask myself to say, are we having a good monitoring system if my monitoring system in a municipality, it does not tell me how many robots are working in eThekwini and for how long they have not been working? If my monitoring does not tell me that, am I having a really good monitoring system? So I'm really interested now on solutions to say, how do we really get a system, a performance monitoring process or a system that will allow us to say that, let's link what is happening on the ground with our performance that we are having on paper. That, to me, that's the most critical part. Thanks very much.
Okay, thanks, Manalisi. So Nirvana, you wanted to, please go ahead and ask that question two participants. You've sent me a note in the chat box, but I'd love for you to ask that question yourself.
Thank you, Rihanna. I think with lots of us working in government, we are so accustomed to the legislated way of doing things and learning from each other. But perhaps if there's colleagues on board this particular session that do not work in government, I would appreciate if they can share their experiences and the way they measure performance within their organization. And perhaps it could be something for the rest of us that work within government to learn from. Thanks, Rihanna.
Thanks, Nirvana. So can I just check specifically if there are colleagues on this call who are not in the government system, whether you have ideas, advice from performance management in the realm you come from, knowing that, of course, as the video indicated, that government and local government in particular is a very complex space, but we'd be keen to learn. So is there anyone okay, so somebody has a hand up. I'm just trying to find you. Alia, please go for it.
Thank
Lovely
you.
to
Thank
have
you
you,
so
Alia.
much for the opportunity. You did specifically ask for anyone who's not in government, so I thought I would take the opportunity to maybe get some responses. For context, I'm currently with the development organization that bilaterally supports government in issues of climate change and climate support with policy and implementation. We do work at the national level. I'm based at the national level, but many would agree that lots of the implementation takes place in partnership with municipalities, or with municipalities often as the beneficiaries of the work. So when it comes to planning, a lot of the projects and a lot of the objectives are decided at the national level between our international partners and the national government. But sometimes that doesn't leave room for perspectives from the municipal and local government level to come through. But I do know, particularly where we hear a lot about the district model, etc., that local government ownership and implementation of projects is something that's wanted from the national perspective, and that lead role at local government, but also through sector departments, is quite is getting more prevalence as well. So my question in specific with that context is, to what extent would municipalities or local government need more support to help align either personal performance goals, municipality performance goals, to, in response to the national perspectives and national objectives? In my case, it's with climate change and climate support, but it could also be relevant for projects where they take place in energy efficiency, transport, etc. I hope that's a clear question, but happy to clarify if needed. Thanks.
Thanks, Alia. Okay, so our panelists, city practitioners, any specific responses to what support do you need to get better alignment going between spheres of government as relates to implementation of projects that land in the space of municipalities? So I'm not sure which one of you want to go for it. Shiona, shall we? Do you want to respond? Shiona?
Thanks, Rihanna. And thank you to, can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Can you hear me, Rihanna?
Yes, we hear you clearly, Shiona.
Thank you. Thank you to the previous speakers' inputs. It's a good question which I'm mulling over, and I like the idea of a solutions-based approach rather than rehashing the problems that we're all familiar with. I think a good work has started with the Circular 88 development. And why I'm saying that is that a platform, a multidisciplinary and intergovernmental platform has been created to bridge the gap in the silo approaches that's been happening in the past. So that platform then allows the different role players and stakeholders to be identified and to give their inputs into their areas of interest for performance management and performance driving a performance agenda. And then secondly, the person who asked about solutions before the lady from the climate change organization. I think for me, in our organization, it's about having the appropriate skills and competencies to start off with. A lot of the work that we've been doing of late is very technical in nature. And in our municipality, we often rely on what we call champions, but those champions are committed to a different area or function within the organization. So I think it's important that we skill those who we expect to play a critical role in performance management, capacitate them appropriately so that we're all working from the same page and understanding it in the same way, and work on those necessary skills, perhaps your research.
Fiona, I'm going to ask you to hold it. I'm going to ask you to hold it. I want to bring Stacey Lee in at this point, because Stacey Lee has posted quite a few issues in the chat, and this session is about empowering the civic. So how do we move this discussion about performance management into what difference we make in the lives of people? So we move it beyond the internal city issues. Stacey Lee, can I bring you in just to articulate what you meant in some of what you've put into the box, and then maybe Paul Curry after that, having played Setopoly. So let's take Stacey Lee and then Paul. Stacey Lee. Stacey Lee, are you able to come in? Okay, I think it has, sorry, Stacey Lee, you're saying that, sorry, I'm just missing that. Okay, you're saying I articulated your stuff well, but I think Stacey Lee is really asking the question, how do we make performance management about what happens in communities as opposed to, so she's having a problem with the sound. But Paul, can we take you in? You played Setopoly before, you've now listened to rules of the game and what the research is beginning to show. Can we invite you in, Paul? And I'm noting another hand.
Sure. I will be frank and say I've been listening with half an ear, given the nature of online meetings these days. What I really appreciate is the comparison of kind of the tacit rules versus the written rules. And I think Setopoly showed that really well. We did some work just now on sustainability indicators, reflecting on the Circular 88 and what types of outcomes they're looking for. And I think Shiona has sort of remarked about that. How do we move beyond the performance? Are we doing what we're supposed to do versus are we achieving the specific outcomes that these actions are supposed to lead to? And I think there were a few sort of levers that struck me as interesting in that piece of work and in workshopping and speaking to a number of cities. And one of which is that we're kind of caught in institutional systems, and in a way we need something to break the inertia. And one of them that struck me was financing, and how our budgets are often drawn based on our continued practice and not based on the new strategies that we're writing. And so we write these beautiful sort of IDPs which articulate what we want to do, but then we're not doing that little shift to rework our budgets based on strategy. So I think
thanks, Paul. I know that Alia has also posted a question in the chat. I'm not sure if we're going to have time to get there, but Manalisa, you had your hand up, and then I think there's also Gianna who's asking about how we connect performance indicators to things like quality of life surveys particularly for Gauteng municipalities. We might not be able to get to all of those, but Manalisi, let me allow you a couple of closing comments, and then I'm going to hand back to Kayla for closing.
Thanks very much. Maybe try to respond to the first question around the alignment between the province and national. You know, colleagues, when I was working at TPME at national, I used to say there is no one who stays at national. There is no one who stays at national. There is no service delivery that is happening at national. Service delivery, people are staying in a particular ward, in a particular municipality. So this thing of, that's why we start to complicate it when we think that when we do certain things at national, then we have done our part, we have missed the point. And that's where the introduction of the DDM came in, to say that if Department of Water, you are saying that you have provided so much people with access to water, those people are staying in a municipality. So in whatever you are doing, please tell us where, in which municipality. So that's a kind of alignment, a practical alignment that we need, not all these matching of similar names and saying that if you mentioned access to your IDP and you mentioned it on the NDP, we call that alignment. That's not alignment. It's just matching of similar names. That's the first thing.
Okay.
The second one, Chair, around the issue of ensuring that.
So Manalisi, I'm aware of time, and I also just want to make sure that we get the maximum number of voices in. So Takalani, you wanted to come in, and then I think Gianna has also posted something. So let me allow Takalani, Gianna, and then back to Kayla, all in like the next 3 minutes. Takalani? Takalani? Takalani, we can't hear you. I'm going to invite, I think it's Gianni who posted in the chat. Can you come in, and then we'll try Takalani again?
Sure, I suppose it's just a quick question. I work on the monitoring, evaluation, and learning team, and I also work in research at VPUU, Violence Prevention Through Urban Upgrading. We're based in Cape Town, and often we work with municipalities, so that's why I was interested in this session. And I was just wondering how often, or I don't know how this works, but how quality of life surveys or things like the I think it's the Municipal Living Conditions Survey in eThekwini. These surveys about quality of life, how are they linked to performance indicators?
Okay, Takalani, I'm not sure if you're going to have better luck this time. Can we try, or any of the other colleagues on? Takalani, go for it. Okay, can any of the other municipal practitioner colleagues who were Shiona or Nirvana answer that question about quality of life and linkages to performance management?
I can take a stab at it, Rihanna. It's Nirvana.
Please, yeah, please go for it,
Okay,
Nirvana.
so right now, they are not directly linked particularly to organizational performance per se. However, if I take eThekwini as a case in point, we've actually started looking at doing that exercise now, where we're triangulating the results from the quality of life survey to the results that are being reported in our SDBIP. And then we also have a service delivery dashboard where we monitor things like the time taken to repair streetlight outages, et cetera, and we're trying to triangulate the results from all three of those tools to make sure that it's telling the same story. If it's not, then we need to look at measures that we need to put in place to then remedy the situation. But prior to this, it was not used. It sat as a separate tool. Thanks, Rihanna.
Okay, thanks. Kayla, we literally have like 30 seconds to close it off. So can I hand it back to you?
Okay, thank you so much, Rihanna, and apologies for such a short, but I think very kind of instructive session. And thank you so much for engaging with the work and for listening in. Thanks especially to our 4 panelists, the practitioners who have been involved in this process from the beginning, and of course to the Perry team. So I'm not going to say anything else, but we will be following up with the final report and the final video, which we'll have on our website, hopefully in the next few weeks. Thank you, Rihanna.
And if we could please remind you, colleagues, as you head off to lunch, please just fill in the feedback form for the session. Thank you very much and enjoy the couple of days that are still left of Urban Festival.
Thanks,
everyone.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Bye.